So, Cathy Martin, first of all, thank you very much for joining us at the Toast Talks podcast.
Thank you.
Absolutely delighted to have you. So we'll start. I've tried to keep this as concise as possible, but owner of Belfast Fashion Week.
Yep.
Longest running fashion event in Ireland. Editor of the F Words, director of CMPR Talent, creator of the Bloggers Brunch. You've done a TED Talks, which is very good, by the way. If anybody hasn't heard that, I would recommend that.
Thank you.
You're also an investor, an influencer with close to 50,000 followers.
No, not even, nearly 40.
You're 48.
38,
If you include Belfast Fashion Week, you're 38 plus your Belfast Fashion Week.
I never thought to add them up, but there you go. That's the accountant in you.
I see. And you're a mentor to numerous different businesses. And lastly, but definitely no means least, you're a mother and partner. Sorry, forgot, you also speak French and Italian fluently.
I do, and a little bit of Spanish as well.
Multilingual. And I don't think I've ever done an introduction as long as that, nor I probably will ever, but there you go. I did read somewhere that you were referred to as Belfast's busiest woman. So before we get into anything else, how do you find the time for it all?
Well, busy doesn't always mean efficient or productive, I have to say. Well, we all know that now. But yeah, I really despise being bored, like literally even for 5 minutes. So I am a very naturally curious person.
Okay.
I come from a big family of 7 kids. I'm 6th. We are all kind of curious and hungry and ambitious to a degree, I think. But I'm just really curious and very positive about life. Like I love this world and this earth and the people on it and the animals and the plants, dare I say, without trying to sound a bit. But anyway, I just love sucking the blood out of life in the most positive way possible. And I think what comes with that positivity and that curiosity is that, you find the time for things that you like.
Yeah.
So just to answer your question, my inbox is always full, and my inbox pretty much is my to-do list. But then from that, I do resort back to paper and pen and have a notebook, and I will make a to-do list. It does help to kind of focus your mind in the working day. If I'm on the go all day, that will usually be in my notes on my phone. Okay. But I don't always get through the to-do list. I have to hold my hands up and say, it's a wish list. It's not always a done list at the end of the day. But I do still get a sense of achievement. I mean, even this morning before you came, I had, a couple of things that I wanted to do, some kind of financial business admin stuff, and also a campaign. And I got everything done before you got here.
Excellent.
So
excellent. Good.
I just think it's really important. You find the time when you make the time.
Yeah.
So, I think prioritizing things and keeping lists and, setting goals helps you do that.
Would you be a naturally organized person?
Yes and no. So, there is a disorganization when you've got so much. I mean, there is a natural sense of disorganization when you're juggling so many balls. If I were doing one thing 9 to 5 all the time, I'd probably be way more organized, but I'd also be really bored.
Yeah.
So I like having different things going on. So I like having, managing talent and influencers, and I like having a PR, a more traditional PR campaign going on. Then I like having Compresso cups as my kind of little baby that I fostered, so I would probably be a bit more organized if I only have one thing, but I have lots. But I'm very organized even when it comes to like filing my emails away. My desk might not necessarily be always the tidiest, but whose is?
No, that's true. We'll roll back a bit before we come to all the various different businesses. But talk us through the early years. So you studied international business with French and Italian, and you spent a year in the French Riviera. I
well, a couple of years, but yeah.
And how good a basis was that for what?
So again, I think it's coming from the big family. You have to not necessarily shout to be heard. It wasn't that bad, but you build a natural kind of resilience and confidence because you're jostling for space a little bit with your siblings. So and then also I was led by really great examples in my elder brothers and sister. They were going out and doing stuff. They were all go-getters. We come from a working class background, a terraced house in Belfast. It was BT9, but maybe not the poshest part of BT9. So we went to St Bride's, a brilliant primary school, and then we all went to Rathmore, which is a school in South Belfast and a brilliant grammar school. We probably naturally built brilliant networks there of people who I still see and network with and work with today. So I think, you know, you naturally, I've forgotten what the question is.
How good of a basis was that?
So I think the family basis was definitely good.
Yeah.
You know, my mum and dad worked really, really hard, and, you know, my dad instilled in us, you know, by his own example. He got pneumonia and left school at 12, ended up being a builder. You know, he just kept telling us to work really hard at school, which we all did. And mum was the same. She really pushed us academically, which we all did. You know, we all achieved well academically and then went on to other things. So I think for me, education is still so important, and academia is still really important, even though the Gary V's of this world and lots of other people will, you know, outline how you don't necessarily have to be academically super smart, and you don't, to be successful. But I think it's a really good foundation, and I would definitely be a real champion for, you know, reading a book and, you know, just getting down and dirty with your basic maths. And, like, you know, I think that's just really, really, really important to instill in our kids. So yes, that's a really good foundation. The family, the school, and then, you know, you mentioned about going off to France. So, I mean, I used to do like a paper run at 13. I worked in a shop at 14. So I started working very, very early. Okay. And I used the money from my part-time job to pay for me to go to France when I was 14 or 15. So I went off and stayed with a French family, thrown completely in at the deep end. I really liked French, but, you know, by the end of that trip, I mean, I didn't even know my different verb endings. So I remember being in the car going from Montpellier to Bordeaux, and the then 10-year-old little brother said to me, "Tu dors?" which means, "Are you asleep?" But I only knew that dormir meant to sleep, the verb. I didn't know that tu dors was the... anyway. Yeah. So the second person. So, but literally I picked all that up on the go. Yeah. And like a child learns a language, I picked it up being, you know, totally immersed in the country and in the language and in the culture. So, I mean, one becomes naturally quite a good communicator per forza, as they say in Italian, when you're in a big family, and then when thrown into the environment like that in France. So I went back to France every summer until I was 18, and I worked there, and I went, and I'm still friendly with Sophie, my first French exchange person. That's incredible. And then I went to the States and worked a couple of summers there, and I just had a really good, you know, understanding. So after my A-levels, I also went to work in Avignon, just outside Avignon, near Villeneuve-les-Avignon. So I went to work there as an assistant, a language assistant. So most people do that in their third year uni, but I did it between A-levels and going to uni. And then I went to university, or Ulster University, first of all, to do European business with languages. Yeah. And then so when I was in France at school, I started studying Italian from French. And then when I went to uni, I picked up Italian as my second language academically with my European business. And then I went off to university in France, to Aix-en-Provence, to do a year there, and did like a postgrad diploma there in international law and economics. And then I came back and I worked in the BBC. And then after that, I got offered a job with Irish Distillers, and I thought I was going to their graduate program in France. Right. But they had placed someone in France. So then they literally, in the middle of the interview, switched to Italian. And I was like, oh, shit. So I can speak Italian, but my Italian, I was never fully immersed in the country yet at that point. So it was a bit like that tu dors moment. Anyway, I literally got through the Italian speaking part of the interview, and the next thing I knew, I was on a flight to Milan. So I'd left. I was in the BBC. I didn't finish off my journalism exams then, but I did them later. And then I went to Dublin to film a TV show on RTE for a month with another thing I'd got. And then I ended up going to Italy with Irish Distillers. And then I was there for 2 years, and then I came back. So I went from Irish whiskey to another year Irish whiskey here. And then I moved to Irish linen for a few years, and then CMPR.
And then but what age are you here? So you're in your 20s here?
So I'm in my 20s. So 18, I went to France to outside Avignon, and then I started uni a year late, so then I did 3 years in Ulster, and I did a year in Aix-en-Provence, and then I came back and I worked for Irish Distillers for 2 years. So actually I finished up in Italy in 1999, coming up to 2000. So I was about 26 then, maybe 25, 26. And then I came back and I worked for Irish Distillers here in Dillonbass in the north for a while. And then I moved from Irish whiskey to Irish linen. And then I worked there for the best part of 4 years until 2004. And then at the end of 2004, I started having meetings about doing Belfast Fashion Week and doing some work on the side. And not necessarily, I didn't double job at that point, but I was looking.
But how did that come about? So you were working in Irish Linens and you started having meetings about it, but like you more or less brought Belfast Fashion Week kind of...
There was, I must say, there was Belfast Fashion Week in another kind of... Guise before that. And so in 2002, I worked on this project for Irish Linen, and it was the 75th anniversary of the Irish Linen Guild, which is kind of like the wool mark for Irish linen. So I curated rather this show I wrote off to designers all around the world and asked them if they had any nice Irish linen clothes in their collections or in their archives, and they did. So I put together this collection of clothes, and then we ended up taking that around the world, and we'd just done a collaboration with DuPont Lycra. So we did this Irish Linen plus Lycra thing. We launched it in the British Embassy in Paris, joint with the Irish Embassy. We went all over the world, and it was just brilliant. And I travelled all over the world with that job, and then came back. But Irish linen in general is a cyclical fabric in terms of trends. So it's coming back in now, but that was kind of its last big peak, 2002, 2003. And Irish linen really was everywhere, both at a designer level and then at a high street level. We were doing projects with, M&S and Next in the UK, and then, also to Ralph Lauren, Saks Fifth Avenue, et cetera, in America. Yamamoto used some of the products. And anyway, so it was really exciting. But I knew then that I was at the peak and it was only going to trough after. So I started looking for jobs, but I couldn't find any jobs in Northern Ireland which would let me use my languages at that point. I'm sure there were some, but I just couldn't find them at the time. And I just couldn't find anything that I really liked. But one of the last projects that I had done with Irish Linen was working with local artist Terry Bradley. So we collaborated together and we printed some of Terry's work onto Irish Linen, and we took it to Heim Textile, which is a big home textiles fair in Frankfurt, and did some other interesting projects with some of the linen finishers here. And then Terry and I just got chatting, and I knew him socially anyway, and then he wanted somebody to do a show for him. So at the end of 2004, I did a show and I launched his art around then. Some people in the art world are probably a wee bit peeved with me for doing that, because I think that was the kickstart of Terry, certainly up here in the north, really having that almost mass market kind of appeal. I mean, Terry's brilliant because he's very commercial and he's also a cool artist, but he would have felt, maybe, I don't want to misquote him, not disrespected, but I think some people, there are art snobs, like there are wine snobs, like there are people in every industry. So I think because Terry wasn't classically trained, some people maybe didn't necessarily respect that. But on the flip side, Terry might not have been classically trained, but his art was loved by people all over, and it was very commercially successful. So anyway, Terry was my first kind of solo project, launching his event. And I mean, I didn't have a partner or a husband or anybody to help me with a mortgage back then. I just had a couple of credit cards, and I just started on my kitchen table with an old laptop and a phone and obviously my internet. And that's all it really takes, well, for the most part, in PR. So I started at my kitchen table, and we will come to it, but I'm kind of almost full circle because, I'm not going back to an office scenario. I'm here and I love it. But yeah, so then it was kind of a leap of faith journey from there. But thankfully, on the back of a very successful event and PR campaign for Terry, then I ended up getting other projects almost right away. And so it's just kind of started from there.
What was the reception whenever you actually started to kind of pitched the idea of Belfast Fashion Week, what was the reception like?
So initially, a lot of the retailers, certainly the independent retailers, because I mean, I had good experience in a fashion and textiles background working for Irish Linen and fashion marketing. And at that point, I was working at a, I would say a global level with, Women's Wear Daily and, Fashion Intelligence and
So you already
WGS.
had great exposure.
So I had a good knowledge of certainly the global media in fashion. And I wanted to bring that here. And I knew that there were lots of independently owned boutiques here, but they didn't really have any budget and they didn't really know what to do with their ad spend if they had any money to put on ads. And then their only option really was to spend £1,000 on a full page ad in, one of the local magazines here. And they're great. Like, if you had a sustained advertising campaign and had that, constant presence, it worked. But sometimes, they might have had the money to actually buy the media space, but then they maybe didn't put the money into the design. So the ad might have flopped because, or it might not, so there were lots of things there. So there have been plenty of successful ad campaigns. I'm not dissing them per se, but what I kind of said to them was, if you work with me in Fashion Week, I can bring you all together. So it was kind of Aristotle's, the sum of the part is greater than the whole. Yeah. That was my philosophy. If we all join together, we'll have a larger, stronger voice. And it was a leap of faith for some of them. They were very worried that, there was one particular city centre independent retailer who'd been there for 20 years at that point, who was very worried that, teaming up with a competitor or a perceived competitor in their sector would have meant that they lost some of their customers to that competitor, but they didn't see the potential gain. Whereas I'm the eternal optimist. I'm like, no, but there's a gain there. You'll all benefit from each other. And if everybody buys well, everybody. So if everybody buys well and you all buy things, that all of your customers could like, then, why couldn't it or wouldn't it be better for everybody? And don't forget, this is kind of still before like retailing or e-tailing online. We're still not there yet for a lot of these retailers. There was no ASOS in 2005. A lot of these companies, I think ASOS was maybe I can't remember what year it was created, but anyway, they're just on the cusp of things. I mean, Facebook didn't even come around till 2007 is that right? Anyway, somewhere like that. But
it's a totally different time.
But it was a totally different time. Yeah. And also we had a bigger, wider media landscape here. So we had, way more magazines. Now we pretty much in Northern Ireland have the Ulster Tat and we've got local women. Then we had Fate magazine, we had In magazine, we had so many more. And even the Belfast Telegraph, Irish News newsletter, the radio stations, they were all hungry for that kind of content because I don't know whether there was that kind of content before. So in a good way, and I don't want to sound arrogant, but we were kind of the first to really push on, creating a big fun event that was for consumers. I mean, I'm kind of against fast fashion altogether now. I've flipped totally in that as well. I'm much more about sustainable fashion and shopping much more consciously. Yep. And that was the behemoth of like consumerism, like totally unconscious consumerism. So I don't feel necessarily guilty or shame about any of that, but it's just, whoa, I've really evolved as a person. Yeah. Having said that, people still make things and people still sell things and business will continue. But I think we can all learn and we can all evolve as businesses and as human beings to do it a little more consciously for the planet and for ourselves and each other.
I think everybody's kind of starting to learn that and understand that maybe it's the fast fashion thing wasn't maybe as good for the environment, but
it's definitely not. I mean, fashion and textiles production is high in chemicals, massive use of water, even just to produce cotton, whilst even natural fabrics and fibers like cotton and linen and silk, are all brilliant. They are the best fabrics for taking dye, of course, and wool. Yeah. So, even though those are better fabrics in terms of decomposition, they're actually usually the ones that are pumped full of dyes and potentially more chemicals. So yes, you've got all your polyfiber fabrics and textiles, but anyway, I could nerd about that for a while. I'll not.
You're definitely a passion, passion. So if we take it in relation to Belfast Fashion Week, what are you most proud of? So it's obviously coming up to its 30th season now.
I'm proud that I just took absolutely nothing and made it into something pretty spectacular. I mean, to build something from scratch is no mean feat for anybody, you know, and like, it really did take blood, sweat, and tears almost. But thankfully, lots of other people were passionate about it as well. And I didn't single-handedly build that. I ended up having a team around me, and loads of volunteers every year, I have to say, or every season. So, you know, we'd have loads of fashion students and whatever who'd come backstage, and they'd literally be doing everything from stuffing goodie bags through to, you know, dressing models, putting stuff away, steaming clothes, whatever. And it really does, you know, it takes a village to raise that baby. It created a lot of work and a lot of creative work. So before Fashion Week, there really wasn't the space and the outlet for makeup artists in the same way that they have platforms now to work. I mean, I know social media has allowed makeup artists to evolve creatively and to, you know, promote their own businesses. But I remember, you know, getting my makeup done to go to events, and people thought this was the most luxurious, extravagant thing you could ever do. And not everybody does it. But I do think Belfast Fashion Week certainly helped platform people like Paddy McGurgan, for example. You know, he worked with us for years on that, and he's naturally very talented, of course. So he would have found his way eventually. But I'd like to think I'm Cathy the catalyst for him, and a couple of others. You know, and also lots of the staff who started off being backstage volunteers for us, and even models and whatever, and staff who worked for me in-house. A lot of them have gone on to do brilliant things internationally. So that makes me proud that there's a nice legacy from Fashion Week in terms of not just the success of the business itself, but also of the people who were involved in it.
Well, it's great. I mean, there's opportunity, providing those opportunities, particularly in fashion, which is extremely difficult. Obviously, there's a lot of people probably have benefited from that. If we change slightly, so with it being International Women's Day, and I sit down with one of the best female entrepreneurs in Northern Ireland, it would be a bit remiss of me not to focus on that. So I've heard you say before, and you've kind of touched on it already, is that you need passion, patience, persistence. I did steal that from TED Talk, so you did use that, but out of those, which one would you think you have most of, or is it an equal measure? Or what?
No, I've got more passion, and I mean, I used to have a bit less patience, but I'm definitely a lot more empathetic and patient now. Definitely persistent, but I think I mentioned resilience earlier as a thing that comes from, you know, I'm not saying we were on the streets or whatever, but you know, I didn't have any privileges starting off. Like I literally got where I if you like, and I wouldn't even say I'm at the pinnacle, maybe that was a few years ago, but like, you know, I definitely got where I am from persistence and passion and, you know, a little, not so much patience, but like I was very resilient, and I just used to see things in the future and just want them and just go for them.
Do you think it's your natural optimism?
Possibly, yeah. And I also think a lot of it's down to communication, because, you know, you can want something really badly, whoever you are and whatever your industry or sector is, but you just might not be able to articulate that verbally in an email or even with your actions. You just might have that fear factor. You just don't know how to like get over the tipping point and actually get on with it. So I think a lot of people have a bit of fear where they just won't take the leap, you know, and it's just, you know, it's just kind of feel the fear and do it anyway. Because I just think, well, fuck it. Sorry for swearing. But like, okay, you know, what is the worst that can happen? And let's talk about failure, because, you know, I have failed plenty of times. I'm not going to rhyme off loads of examples, but, you know, I've said stupid things or done stupid things. I mean, personally as well as in business. And you make mistakes, you cock up. But I just feel that if you don't take a really good learning from those things, then you can't really progress and move on and evolve. That's not to say that, you know, I think it's a good thing to pick out people's mistakes and errors and whatever, because there's a lot on, you know, talking about social media, there's so much out there, people criticizing. And, you know, you look at recently, like Kanye West having pretty much a very public breakdown and, you know, making efforts to get back with his ex-wife. And so many people were voyeuristic about that and laughing at him and stuff, when clearly the guy, he's been, you know, diagnosed as bipolar. And I just don't agree with him being a laughingstock to the mob. And I also, Britney Spears, if you look at, the documentary that was done on Britney and Netflix, in the 90s, I was probably part of that media consumer kind of hunger beast that wanted more. I've never really been that into celebrities' lives, but I certainly did pick up a Grazia edition, and I will have read through it. But I certainly didn't really think about the person at that point, maybe. So maybe that comes with age or wisdom or your own experience. But I really disagree with, the pile-on culture that we have now. If someone
other people down.
makes a small mistake, like all of a sudden it's amplified. And
do you think social media has a responsibility in that?
Yeah, but everyone talks about social media this and social media that. Social media is people. So it's the human beings who have a responsibility. Like, yes, Twitter and Facebook can put up some boundaries at a tech level, but like, we're responsible for what we say. Like, we are the human beings who are typing those words. So, you can't put it all on Mark Zuckerberg or whomever else. And like, people always...
Like, you wouldn't say it in person, so why do you feel the need you can say it online?
And so some people say, oh, you should have to show your driving license or whatever to have a Twitter account. And then other people fight back and say, no, well, some people need anonymity. And both arguments are valid. But at the same time, as soon as an account starts abusing its power by being slanderous or whatever, then someone has to step in. But I don't know then, when you look at really good Nobel Prize winning scientists being cancelled in the last year, it's like, oh, okay, right.
For one thing they said.
Yeah, for one thing they said, is it really misinformation or is it just not what you agree with? And like, because I'm a comms person, I will listen to both sides of every argument. I think that's so important that we do. And I think what social media has allowed us to do and what the algorithm has allowed us to do is to become, for our ideas and our likes and our favorite things, those beliefs all being compounded. So you end up being more extreme, which is what we saw in 2016, both with Trump and also with Brexit and stuff here. So, I mean, we've got to reel back and maybe learn from that a little bit. All of us as humans and potentially the tech companies as well. But
it's definitely, that is, it amplifies that, everybody thinks the same as me, and you're kind of going, well, it's only because you're being shown that, because think so.
And then it is a bit like traditional media. If you're only reading a real right-wing newspaper, for example, let's talk social media here, you will think those views, and those views will be compounded. And there were radio stations that were potentially a bit more lefty or righty, if we're going to take traditional kind of liberal versus conservative politics in mind here. So it did exist a little bit beforehand, but social media has just really compounded all of those, and it's a bit scary, because
no, it definitely is. Just on that, you've touched on confidence and being key and kind of just having the fear and doing it anyway. Do you think that's a key? And have you ever felt where you've had to you've been in a situation you're like, geez, I'm not really sure if I should be here? A bit of I hate the imposter syndrome is what it's called now, but is there a certain amount of that regardless of what you do, because you have to kind of push yourself and
yeah, I think for some people it might be a little bit harder. I'll never stand up and talk about something if I haven't researched it. But again, it goes back to that natural curiosity, the natural hunger. So I'm watching Inventing Anna at the minute on Netflix. So not only am I watching the series, I will read everything I can find out about that. So I've read the original New Yorker articles. I've read some brilliant kind of outtakes and sidelines on the cut. But I mean, there are lots of different opinions there. So like we just said, I don't like that pile-on mentality, just slagging her off all the time. I am fascinated by her psychology. So again, I've forgotten what the original question was, but I think you're talking about, confidence.
Yeah.
So I will always inform myself before I do most things. Yes, you can wing it, and I have winged it. What's the past tense of winged it? I have not wung it. I've definitely been guilty of winging it before, but I wouldn't talk about something really specific unless I,
Yeah.
you know, I will definitely research it. And even if, you know, I present and host events all the time now, so I'll just say to the organizer or whatever, right, give me a 30-second, right, I want that. Give me your little tidbit. And that, you know, I can work off that. I can fill in, I can improvise, I can keep going. But again, Michael, I think some of that comes with age too.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done it at 20.
No.
You know, I couldn't do it now. So I've kind of been round the block a few times. So, you know, and I'm not talking absolute baloney either. Like I'll know, and you'll repeat yourself, but just say something differently. Maybe I've done that today.
It is. It's true. You're right in the sense that there's you have a certain level of confidence, but you don't want it to be overconfidence or arrogance that you don't need to research anything or know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So just
I remember, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Someone said to me, "You're really overconfident," but their facial expression, because I would have taken that as a compliment, you see, but their facial expression to me was saying that was a really bad thing, and I just said, "Does that intimidate you?" and with a smile, and I just think, you know, I'm not overconfident. I'm not intimidating. You're intimidated.
Yeah.
So let's work on like why are you intimidated?
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, it is true that you know, but
I love a confident woman, especially.
Yeah.
I love a confident woman.
And that's what. So, what do you think is different for female entrepreneurs that men don't really have to deal with?
Well, vagina for start. So, you know, they give birth. Not all women do, but a lot of women do. There's absolutely no doubt in this world that having a child or children completely messes up to a degree your opportunities, straight talking career opportunities.
Yep.
So depending on where you are in your age and stage in life and what you've got in terms of support around you, so be that a husband or a partner, a baby daddy, or be that childcare, whether paid or family, or even just mental and emotional support around you from family and friends. If you have a child, you know, it's not easy making and raising a mini human. Like they aren't, you know, they aren't straightforward little machines. So, and there's no rule book either. So, you know, some people will choose to raise their child completely differently to how I've raised or I'm raising mine. And that's okay. And I respect everybody's decision on what to do, unless, of course, they're doing something hurtful or damaging.
Yeah.
But I think that's our key difference. You know, we have kids and, you know, we are seeing strides and moves towards making paternity leave, for example, you know, and the Twitter CEO recently taking proper, you know, switch off paternity leave is a really good thing.
Like it shouldn't always be.
No, but he was almost championed for doing that, and I'm like, okay, I get why he's being championed for doing it because it's a really good step and it's a real best practice thing for us all to learn from. But then it's like women like have to take. I didn't take any maternity leave. Valentina came 8 weeks early, and I'm self-employed, and I didn't have the opportunity at all to take maternity leave, so I just kept going. I'm not boasting about that. I'd love to have had time off. I mean, I remember sitting on that sofa with her down, my t-shirt and my laptop in my lap. And, you know, some people will champion and cheerlead me for doing that. But like, all I'm thinking is I'd love to have had my arms around her. Not to mention the potential radiations coming out of laptop. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. So, yes. So the first thing is childcare. And the second thing is I don't want to stereotype, but I mean, it is a basic kind of physiological difference that women are, for the most part, more empathetic and, you know, it's left brain, right brain sort of stuff, whereas men are probably mostly more mechanical. And some might say, well, then it's a good thing that men have more of the physical jobs or the methodical jobs and women have more of the creative job. But that's not necessarily true, because if you look at most industries, actually the senior posts are all male and the women don't really have those opportunities. I think a lot of that's because of children. It's not because of brain or capacity or any of those secondary things I've mentioned. And I think that will change, but it's definitely been a hindrance so far. And, you know, all those women in the 60s burning bras, you know, a lot of women my age and younger don't really appreciate that we probably still wouldn't be where we are today if they hadn't done that. And even suffragettes. And I know people, and especially young people who have worked for me before, or young people that I know in my own family, my nieces and stuff, who won't vote. And I'm like, do you know, women died so that you could vote? Like, can we please talk about the suffragettes?
Yeah.
So, you know, I just think that so many sacrifices were made to actually give women some basic rights. And I think we owe it to those women to actually, you know, take those rights and, you know, do what we can with them. And I'm about, you know, women empowerment, but by empowering women, that doesn't mean to say we, you know, totally emasculate men either. You know, I'm all for equality, but I'd still like the door to be held open for me. So, like, yes, I am that confused person, but I don't think it's confusing. I would hold the door open for somebody like an older person or whomever, or a younger person, or, you know, so I think it's just about being polite, you know, and finding a nice kind of happy medium. In the workplace, though, I think it's about giving women the right to apply, giving women opportunities, you know, giving them brilliant opportunities to come back to after they've had kids. And, you know, if you look at a woman who's, you know, been at home with kids for maybe 5 or 6 years until they've kind of all got to school, getting back to the workplace, for some of them it might be tough and might be a terrible readjustment. But actually, most of the people that I know who've done that are absolutely dying to get back in and use their brains in a different way rather than, you know, Peppa Pig reruns. I mean, there was a point in my life I could have recited at least 6 episodes verbatim of Peppa Pig, but we're not there now.
I think I have Coco Melon at the minute.
Yeah, so Coco Melon's the big thing. I know I am not familiar, so we're Peppa Pig.
You're well, Peppa Pig. I think both are equally as bad. Yeah. But you touched on it there about the senior level positions and things like that in companies. And if we as a society don't do some things to change that, what are we losing from females not being represented on a board? If you're running a company and it's all run by men, what do you know?
I think women will give you that empathy that you need, not only for your employees, but also for your customers, no matter what industry you're in. Yep. And I think women will also kind of take risks differently. So I don't want to say they won't take risks, because they will, and because I have, and I know plenty of women who have too. But they will take risks differently. So they'll weigh up the potential losses, I think, a little bit more. Yeah. And again, I don't want to stereotype completely, but I just think that, you know, some of the most successful businesses I know are businesses that are run by women. And I don't know whether it's like a sex stroke gender thing. I just think that there's a suck it and see in me. You know, I think we need to give women an opportunity and then see how we go with them, because for some, like a man, it might not work out. They might not be the best person for the job. But I think until we start giving more women opportunities, we'll be able to measure that. Yeah. You know, we're nowhere near measuring the potential of women because they just have not been given those opportunities. We just haven't seen it. I don't know how to really positively discriminate. Is that the right word? Towards bringing women into a company or in positions. I think there jobs, careers, and everything else should still be given on merit. But whilst we've got merit, we need to take, and not just in terms of diversity of women as in gender, I also think diversity in terms of background, ethnicity, ability, all of those things, because there are plenty of people out there who have potentially learning difficulties or learning disabilities or physical disabilities, who are subconsciously discriminated against, some consciously too. So I think it's really important that we as a society and business people in general give more opportunities to people. And you know what? I just think we're too afraid of failure, and I think we should allow people to step in and step up. And if they don't make it, they don't make it, but there are always learnings. Yeah. Always.
Hopefully it's changing. I mean, it was always that, companies was a capitalist and the only focus was profit and that was it. And I think now, hopefully things are changing in that. You mentioned sustainability in terms of fast fashion and things like that. And then companies are becoming a bit more corporate social responsibility. Hopefully, whether it's going far enough yet, is debatable, but we'll have to.
Yeah, there's a bit of greenwashing going on in some companies. But anyway, at least they're making strides, so I will never disrespect them for making an effort. But yeah,
it's maybe not
make more.
Yeah. Just we've kind of touched on it already, but one of the things that I noticed more or less straight away from doing my research on the podcast was your positivity and your mindset. You've had a lot to deal with both in business and personal aspects, but you've always said that you're the eternal optimist. How do you manage to maintain your positivity?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Just a natural...
One of my clients is McKinney competitions, and I keep buying tickets, and I'm not actually allowed to win. So I buy them for other people. I'm like, I promise I'm going to win a Range Rover. Anyway, and I just said to my partner the other day, I'm not buying any more tickets because, you know, I'm not allowed to win. And even if the car won and it was your name and, you know, everything, you know, I probably end up having my ticket disqualified anyway because I kind of paid for it for you. And anyway, so we had a laugh about that. I am eternally optimistic because, I mean, I just I've lost both my parents now. I've lost my daughter. Yep. I've lost quite a few friends now. And I think all of that unfortunate death and misfortune around you just makes you appreciate what you do have in life. So, I mean, I think even from a young age, like, you know, I'd be like, oh my God, I got a job, you know, when I was 14. And I remember being so excited that I got a job. I didn't think I was spending 16 hours a week standing in a shop when I should have been studying for my A-levels. But would I have actually studied those 16 hours? Probably not. Thankfully, you know, I got really good results without those 16 hours. I did work really hard. I am one of these people who enjoys studying and working, and anyway, and I enjoy actually getting the grades. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm just really grateful to be here. I'm always really grateful for and that almost sounds cliched, but I just think whilst I've had lots of highs in my life and brilliant experiences that I've strived for myself, and some opportunities that have come my way and other opportunities that I've spied and sought after and got, there have been a few crap times too, and like those deaths and things. So you've got to weigh up, you know, the peaks and troughs in life. And so, you know, I'm not saying the highs are really high and the lows are really low. It's not like that at all, but you've got to kind of roll with the punches. Yeah. And so again, I think it's my attitude to mistakes and my attitude to things that go wrong. I just think, right, well, this has gone wrong. Okay, so what are our next steps out of this? So, or what are my next steps out of this? Or how can I fix this? So, you know, thank God, you know, my mental health has never been in a place where it's been really dark or black. But I have got some friends and former colleagues who have gone through really dark days. And so, I mean, literally lived with them going through that. And it's really tough. I haven't been there myself, so I can't fully empathize in a really personal way. What I do know is that I'm really lucky then to have my mental health. And I also am really particular about looking after my physical health. Yeah. And I eat really well, and I eat very healthily for the most part. I mean, you wouldn't think it because I had 7 Ferrero Rochers last night. But
everybody's allowed to fall off now.
Yeah, you know, they're just post-Valentine sweets, you know. But for the most part, I eat really, really healthily. And, you know, a lot of the times I have friends who are like talking about, and this is no disrespect to mental health, they'll talk about being really anxious and having anxiety and palpitations and whatever. And I'll be like, right, what caffeine did you have this week? And it turns out they'll have had loads of Red Bull or Monster or loads of coffee. And I'm like, for God's sake, like, can you not actually see the balance here? Yeah. Now, of course, there is anxiety without those things. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But what I am saying is there are certain factors that you personally can change. And there are changes that you can make to affect that. And a lot of people, I mean, I follow this amazing doctor online called Dr. Mark Hyman, and he talks incessantly about functional medicine and about the food that we put into our bodies, which affects everything from our possibility and ability to sleep, to our mental health, to our physical health, to our propensity for disease and all of those things. So, and I've been kind of following that functional medicine ethos for a long while now, probably since Rosie in 2011, which is 11 years ago. So I'm really healthy. I don't really drink alcohol anymore. I love a glass of port with my cheese. I love a glass of really nice wine with dinner the odd time. And if there's a gorgeous gin and tonic, I will get a gorgeous gin, and I will maybe have that every once in a wonder. And that's not me being Puritan, nor is it me being, self-righteous. I've just made those decisions for myself. I probably should give up caffeine, because I only started drinking coffee about how old am I now? 49. I only started drinking coffee in my 40s, so about 42 or so. But I love coffee, and it actually wires me in a brilliant way, and I get really creative, and the ideas come out of me like crazy. So I love it. I have a coffee and get a notebook out. But I think you just, I definitely look after my physical health. Yeah. I work out, I sleep, I try and make sure I sleep well. I listen to audiobooks, or I meditate with headphones in before I go to sleep. And I really try and relax my mind. And I think looking after your physical health will also look after your mental health. And I think for me, I know I've probably rabbited on a little bit in this answer, but I think just it is about being grateful for what you have. Yeah. And, there are so many things which you could complain about, but if you have your physical health, you have a roof over your head, if you've been educated, you're already in the top 5% of people in the world. So, you're lucky. Yeah. So,
is that something that, so you're obviously a mentor to particular female businesses or people obviously ask for your mentorship on that. Is that something that you would kind of highlight in a mentorship capacity as well?
100%. I mean, people think I am nuts when I go on about what you eat, and they're like, we're supposed to be talking business here. But if you're eating processed food all day every day, you're not going to have a good clear mind to get on with good business decisions. And again, a lot of the females that I work with and volunteer with, they will have stuff going on in their personal lives, everything from domestic violence to financial control of partners and whatever. And for me, one thing is really important, and I really champion and cheerlead women who can have their own financial independence from their partners. Now, that's not to be a selfish Sally about the whole thing, but I just think it is really good. So many people my age especially, and younger, and older, we're in relationships where the male was the breadwinner and the female wasn't, had no work, had no source of income whatsoever. And then when or if that marriage or relationship broke up, they were destitute. They had nothing. They were literally left with nothing. And in 2 cases, they were homeless, for a short term, thankfully. But, so I'm really pushy actually about getting your financial self sorted. Yeah. And I think, it is really important to take advice from good accountants and good people around you on that. And I think I probably, before I started my own business, was always a bit scared of accountants. Yeah. And I don't know whether not scared in one sense. I always just thought, ooh, but talk to the right one, and they won't scare you. They'll actually help and advise you navigate. And that's why we specialize in business. I'm a comms person. I actually, after my degree, was given a place in Ernst & Young to go on and be a chartered accountant. Okay. And I still... You turned your back on the world of accountants. I know. And because I do love maths, and Valentina, my daughter, loves maths as well. So we both enjoy solving problems. But anyway, when I say I love maths, I actually flip and hate accounts. It's the worst thing in the world. So I'm really glad to give those over to someone. Yeah. And whilst, I've got lots of things, lots of success going on in business, there have been times when I have not been aware of cash flow. I've not been aware of what my income has been. I had no idea I'd crossed the VAT threshold. Then you're buggered when you get So it's just
Is that a learning tool? So
learning tool. It was the biggest kick in the ass ever. Like, when I in the past, I actually have had to wind up businesses because they've failed, and I'm not afraid to admit that that happens. But
it's getting a natural part of business.
A lot of the most successful entrepreneurs will have wound up businesses in the past, and for me, I was like nearly ashamed because my mum would have said to me up until she died, nearly, "Are you going to get a job soon?" Because I just don't think she really got what I did. And like, I remember when I first started my own business, I remember my then boyfriend's granny saying to me, "Now, what's your uniform going to be like?" And she comes from that era where she had no idea. And I was like, no, I'm at my kitchen table with a laptop. And she just couldn't get it at all. So even just trying to explain to those people what I was doing, and it'll be the same when Valentina and her children are older. I know that there are jobs that don't exist now that they will be doing in the future. And that fascinates me.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. So you're in a fortunate position where phone a laptop and you can do your business. Do you think that's changed enabled more female entrepreneurship because you are trying to balance being a mother or a primary caregiver or whatever the case is with actually running a business?
Yes, it has, but also let's talk work from home and pandemic, because everyone or a lot of people were told to work from home or were forced to work from home. And their kids' schools were closed. And even in the home environment, when both parents were both working from home, the female was still expected to do the lion's share of the homeschooling stroke care of the kids. And it's just, I know that divorce rates have gone up since the pandemic, and that potentially might have been part of the reason. But I just... we as a nation and we as a culture, not just UK, Ireland, I think Western society, culturally, we need to definitely share child raising kind of rules a bit better. And we need to, share as much as we need to share kind of business decisions and whatever too. But I just, I think it does make for a really difficult career path for women if you want to have more than a couple of kids. And
until we solve that, we're just...
and childcare is blooming expensive, it's really, really expensive. Valentina left her nursery 6 years ago or so, but even then it was £50 a day. And that's £250 a week. That's £1,000 a month. So you have to be and if you've got any size of a mortgage or a rent or whatever, the basic salary that you need to be able to have a kid, and that's one kid, you know.
You multiply that, say 3 or 4. It's just really prohibitive.
Like, again, having kids and having the expense of kids. And before Valentina, I had 3 stepkids here as well, but even the expense of them and feeding them, it's like, wow, it made me just think of my mum with so much reverence. Because I'm like, how the hell did she manage to raise 7 of us on my dad's tiny wage, but we did okay.
But that's the thing, is it's not just the sides, the big expenses that you notice. Like if you have 3 or 4 kids and you go to McDonald's, you're £20 plus every time that you go, or somewhere,
and even hobbies. Valentina does Irish dancing, and it's just like we do festival dancing, so we don't have tan and wigs and the £3,000 dresses. Our dresses are 350 quid, so it's completely different. But like, if you wanted to have a hobby, if your child wanted a hobby or had a natural talent for just picking Irish dancing, because that's what I know, it's prohibitive if you don't have a decent salary. So again, I count myself very lucky that I'm able to provide Valentina with the opportunity to do that.
And I think we do need to get better just at at what we do, the shared responsibility, all that sort of thing. I mean, like, I even see it in our own personal situation. It's, you're working, so automatically it's, my wife's expected to do the childcare, and you kind of go, that's not really fair either. So we do, what I have to say is we do it equally currently, but not everybody's as lucky to be able to do that.
I'm 99.9% myself with Valentina, and that's okay. It didn't used to be like that pre-pandemic, but unfortunately the pandemic just totally changed how we could do things. So
Yeah.
It's fine.
We'll have to get better at it.
Yeah.
In relation to, so just a bit more about the business side. If there was women trying to start their own business now, what would your advice be to them? Sure, you get asked that a lot, but
I do, and I think so. There are two trains of thoughts on how to start a business, and one is kind of plan and prepare and get all your paperwork ready and like do everything and have it all in place and then go. And I did the opposite to that. So I kind of went with like the Gary Vee. I was just like, right, I'm going to organise this event. And I was like, oh yes, right, okay, I'm now a sole trader. So I kind of went arse about face a little bit. No, that's maybe a little bit of an exaggeration, because I went to Invest NI. I took advice from Invest NI, and at that time they were helping to fund startup business website design.
Okay.
So they designed my website, and I did this miraculously, because I know it doesn't happen this fast anymore, but I got my website done in a month, and it was pretty basic. It was like about us and services and contact. It was really like old style website. And anyway, so I had that, so it wasn't quite as bad as what I said, but I didn't, like there are certain sort of procedures that people tell you to go through, and I don't want to diss anyone who wants to get everything in place. I had up my business bank account. I had, I'd done kind of basic stuff, but I didn't.
They're pretty important though.
I know, of course they are, but like things like someone said, where's your health and safety policy? And I was like, oh shit, I don't have one. So then I wrote one after I did my first event. And then, so I can't remember, but I think what I would say is don't let the paperwork dull your passion, because you can get bogged down in the minutiae, and you might not think it's minutiae because you will say it's required. Yeah. So, but if you're a creative person and you're a passionate person and you know what you want to do, then, keep doing it, and, call in the experts to do the legal side or the bean counting side or whatever. Know your own strengths, and then, and call in the experts to do the other bits.
Excellent. Okay. What about the expectations of running running a business, being your own boss, and kind of the ups and downs of business?
So, funny, I was talking about this recently. In terms of, what to expect, I think being self-employed versus being employed, there are brilliant advantages and disadvantages to both. Mm-hmm. So being self-employed, I would say the best things about being self-employed for me are, that flexibility, that mobility. And for a young or not so young mum, that's amazing, because you can work around your children's schedule. Yep. You can work around your own schedule. You can take a nap in the day if you need to, if you're kind of a new mum or whatever. So that flexibility is amazing. But at the same time, every business is 24/7. Mm-hmm. And well, if you're passionate, it does become all considered. I know you do need rest, but there ain't much rest for anybody who's starting a new business. And if you're as passionate as I am or was starting up, certainly I didn't. I was so passionate. I didn't really want to sleep, so I was buzzing on adrenaline and really wanted to get going. And like I love idea creation. It's one of my favorite parts of my job. So. Sometimes my best ideas come late at night. So what you have with that flexibility and mobility is you have the inability to switch off, whether that's in your mind or actually switching off your phone constantly going. Yeah. So you have to decide yourself where your boundaries are and where you're what time you're gonna stop answering texts or emails. I mean, currently I work with a lot of social media influencers. So, the busiest time on social media is at nighttime. So that's when they're posting things. Yeah. They'll usually need approval in the evening after business hours or at weekends. And there are a lot of people, social media managers in big brands, for example, who don't work weekends. And I'm just like, right, you guys need to put someone on this at the weekend, because I need to have sign off at the weekend before we go live, or if and when it does go live, someone needs to check that everything's okay. Or for example, you know, an Instagrammer will be putting up, you know, an ad or a paid partnership, and they need to okay that right away. Otherwise the Advertising Standards Authority will be coming on, or trolls or whatever will come on and say that's not marked as an ad, when actually you've requested paid partnership, but they just haven't signed off at the brand end. So anyway, so flexibility and mobility is a great thing, and never switching off is a bad thing. Potential to earn loads of money self-employed, but you can also have that potential in an employed job as well. The disadvantage there in self-employment is that your income is really variable. So you can have absolutely outstanding months or years or weeks or whatever, and then you can be literally on the breadline at other times. And I think in 2020, you know, I think in the months of March, April, May, June, I had, I don't know, I think maybe at least 15 events lined up, and they all literally were pulled from underneath me. So you're talking more than tens of thousands of pounds just gone from my income and potential earning. And of course, at that point, we didn't know what was happening with our staff. It was pre-furlough. It was all of those things. So it was a really fearful time for me. And, you know, with a mortgage and, you know, a child to keep and, you know, and a child to homeschool, and being by myself, I was like, what the hell? I didn't, like, at that point, I didn't really know what was going on. So that definitely, the variable income is a worry and a disadvantage, but it can also be a brilliant advantage. So if you know what to do with the money on your good times and good months, you know, back in the day, I invested some of the money that I made in my heyday, pre having children. So I invested some of the money in, say, rental properties or whatever. And that's really good if you know how to invest the money in, and then it will pay off long term for you.
Just gives you that bit of stability.
Yeah, it's a little bit of balance. So I think they're the main differences, I think, and the main sort of advantages, disadvantages I see in both both kinds of working.
So listen, I'm conscious of your time, so I'll finish up with just a few fun ones before we go. Who's your favourite local Instagram influencer?
Oh God. Well, I mean, I represent Melissa Riddell and I absolutely love her. She's from Maherfeld, and my brother lives in the Loop, so like doing it for Mid-Ulster. And also actually up in Mid-Ulster you've got Jerry Lavs, who's hilarious. Jerry actually started off as an intern for me, and he's very funny. He does get a bit risque on his stories sometimes, which I think Instagram doesn't like, but I like. And I represent Paul Moneypenny, who's Moneypenny Interiors, so I do a lot of work with him. And there's just so many, really. You know, like Anna Blossoming Birds, I love this sort of wholesomeness of her and her daughters. Loads of them, really. There's just, and gluten-free Fee is funny, and got a lovely wee son. And I love Tiffany Bryan, but she left Instagram. But she was probably the real champion and cheerleader for us all. She led the way in Northern Ireland, certainly as the first kind of one, the first Instagrammer to kind of make it. So.
She's made a slight reappearance with her house renovation, which I have to say,
really well.
I looked at.
No, everybody loves it. And funny, this morning I was looking at a campaign and I was like, oh my God, I should really text Tiffany because this would be perfect for her. But I'm not even going to make that approach because I don't know whether she's doing any commercial stuff yet or not. We'll have that chat soon.
You can have it, yeah. Favourite restaurant currently?
Well, I work with James Street South, so I'd be hard pushed not to include Nile in a top 3. But I like Belfast is full of amazing restaurants. I love James Street. I love Blank on the Malone Road. If you haven't tried that, it's really nice. It's similar in vibe to Six by Nico, which is also really good. I love Ox. Haven't been in a while. And yeah, I love so many. But then I also love like a really good chippy. I love fish and chips.
Sometimes hard to beat.
All of it a balance, really.
Yeah.
And I love just the juice jar is great. Sam has become a friend of mine who owns a juice jar. He's just about on his 3rd one in Bristol. So I love the healthiness of that. And I would go there and get celery juice, or I'd go and get an acai bowl, and their coffee's also amazing. I just don't like the plastic cups that he uses. So he and I have locked horns on that. We've locked horns on that a couple of times, and I'm trying to encourage him to be the first cafe in Northern Ireland to only keep cups for coffee. Anyway, we'll get there.
Summer or winter?
Oh my God, summer. I hate winter. I hate dark nights.
Gym or book?
Oh my God, no, both. I couldn't choose.
Book on the treadmill?
Or an audiobook on the treadmill. Or a podcast on the treadmill. Yeah.
Next trip.
So I'm off to Greece in May for a yoga retreat for 5 days. Semi-working, so I will be I'll be creating content there for Alex, who runs it. So that's my next trip. Although before that, am I going somewhere? I'll be going to London next month. So yeah, I'm going over for a couple of things around St. Patrick's. So
okay, last one. If money was no object, what would your next fashion purchase be?
It wouldn't be fashion. It would be a new car.
Okay, let's go with a car.
And it would be an electric car. So
a Tesla.
If there was a nice, well, I don't know. I haven't even been in a Tesla before, but it would definitely be an electric car. Mm-hmm. And you know, whilst I can't think of anything fashiony that I would like, because I don't really think I need anything. But I'm sure I could browse on Net-a-Porter for 5 minutes and answer that.
Sort that. Listen, Cathy, it's been absolutely amazing. Thank you very much for joining us.
Michael.
You've been an absolutely excellent guest. So
sorry if I've given very long-winded answers. They do call me Cathy Martin sometimes when I have too much coffee, and today is one of those days.
No, really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.